Hi, everybody. Let's take a look at step 3 of your key assessment. So at this point, you will complete step 3 within your template, which steps 1 and 2 should have also been used for, or which should have also been used for steps 1 and 2. So at this point, you should have 1, 2, and 3 all in the same document, all completed within your template. So for step 3, you're going to use the information that you learned about families in your class or the class that you're observing to select an activity to perform or to implement with the children. So you're going to select a culturally responsive, developmentally appropriate activity. The instructions here say, based on the information you learned about families of children in your class from steps 1 and 2, select an activity to implement with children. Select one of the activities found here. And here's the link to pages and pages of activities. So you can just scroll through until there's a title that strikes you or you see some words you like or something like that. Or what you can do before you start scrolling through to narrow it down a little bit is, think about what you learned from those families and see if one of these goals best fits, and maybe start there because then they are organized by goals. So here are goal 1 activities, and that elaborates a little bit more on goal 1. And so there are pages and pages of goal 1 activities. And then you can just keep going from there. It doesn't tell you what page number any of them that they each start on. So you would just scroll through until you get to the 2s or the 3s or the 4s. Unfortunately, our activities do not have ages on them. I feel like that would have been a nice thing to do is say age group, but they do not. So if you find one that you like that isn't necessarily best for the age group that you're working with, just modify it until it does work to make it developmentally appropriate for the age and the children that you are working with. So select your activity. You can select any of them, but you do need to justify why you selected it based on what you learned in steps 1 and 2. So that will be part of what you have to write. They don't mention age. We talked about that. One of the bullets, and we'll talk about it when we get there, is that you do need to align these to the early learning guidelines. If you haven't taken the class where we've talked about guidelines yet or standards, those are basically what we're trying to accomplish with lessons, what goals we're trying to meet. Just like your classes in college have intended outcomes and things that we want students to learn, the same should be true when you're planning activities with these children. And so the state has developed for pre-K through 12, they've developed standards. And in the early years, we call them guidelines because they're not as strict as standards, but we call them guidelines. And they're things that we want children to be learning and working on as they're developing. And I guess another reason it's standards is, okay, did they meet it? And guidelines is, okay, we're working on this thing. It's not, they're not going to have a standardized test to determine if they met it or anything like that. You are going to actually implement these activities. So make sure you look at the due date for step 4 to see when you have to have that done by. And you're going to use a bulleted format in your template to write these things. The activity title and the page number you found it on. What goal was that? 1, 2, 3, or 4, and the brief description of the goal. And then you're just going to briefly describe the activity. Then you're going to tell what age group you're going to implement it with, any way that it needs to be modified for the age group. Try to use complete sentences here, or it might even take you a paragraph or so. Same with briefly describe the activity. We want a full paragraph there. How this activity will be culturally acceptable for the families from steps 1 and 2, based on what you learned about them and or their responses to the survey. Again, this should be at least a couple sentences, if not a full paragraph, but we do want it in paragraph form. Evidence of how this activity you selected is DAP for your age group. You're going to use NACCE's position statement on DAP as your support and select at least 2 guidelines from pages 15 through 28. So here's that. And then when we get to page 15, you see all these different broken down. So like, sorry, apparently I'm not So 1, you would creating a caring, equitable community of learning. So you would put 1, and then you would put and include the language and put A and include at least the bolded language. Don't just put 1A. You can copy and paste, but put the whole thing. To be even more specific, you could put 1A1. Not all of them have that though. So you could do that, and you're going to give at least 2 examples from any of these as to what makes your activity DAP. And you're going to explain what about your activity matches this guideline. So don't just copy and paste them, but so you'll have a bullet DAP guideline 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, and then the language, and then explaining, and then another bullet where you do the same thing. And then you're going to do the state standards or guidelines met. If you're not in Oklahoma, you need to include a link to your standards or guidelines. If you are in Oklahoma, you're going to find those. And you might as well just download these to your own computer so that you're not having to go back in the module all the time. But they are right here. You're working with 3 to 5-year-olds. You're going to pick that one. You're going to find what standards are being met. So your choices are these 8. So, if you know creative skills are being met, you're going to jump to page 10. Here we are at creative skills. So then you're going to say, okay, is it creative skill standard 1? Or is it creative skill? Oh, there's only one creative skill. Let's go with language arts. Language arts standard 1 or language arts standard 2. Well, maybe it's standard 2. So you're going to put language arts standard 2, and you're going to put all of this, and then you're going to put A. So you're not just going to put language arts standard 2A. You're going to put language arts standard 2, and then the language A, and then the language. You don't have to put these examples unless it's that it's broken down. But if it's just examples, you don't need to do that. So that's for 3 to 5. It's a little bit different if you're using 0 to 36 months because they're broken down in each one then by age. Like there's 0 to 18 months and 18 to 36 months. So you'll have to specify which one you're in. So again, these are the 8 you have to choose. Oh, 9 for them. Sorry, I forgot. 9 you have to choose from for them. And so if you scroll down here, you'll see standard 1. So you would put approaches to learning, standard 1, and the language. And then you would specify if you're in 0 to 8 months, 6 to 18 months, or 16 to 36 months. And then we don't get our ABCD. You would have to you would in this case select one of these. So it's a little bit different for toddler or preschool. Okay, so to go back to our key assessment step 3 page. Okay, so you've given examples of DAP. You've explained, not explained. You don't have to explain on these. You just have to show them on these. So basically, you're going to have 2 of these sets of bullets here when you have to meet the 2 standards, because you're going to put which document it's from, which category it's in, which standard it is, what the substandard is, and so forth. And then you'll do all those 5 bullets again. And then you're also going to use the code from the NACCE Code of Ethical Conduct that supports the use of this activity. So you're going to pick at least one code from the Code of Ethical Conduct. And those are ideals and principles. If you haven't taken a class where we've done those yet, you'll scroll through those and select one. Here's the preamble and the core values, and then you get into section 1. Okay, so here are the section 1 ideals, and here are the section 1 principles, and then it's the same for all 4 of them, ideals and principles. So you would just like, if you think it's ideal 2-1, you would highlight this whole thing and include the whole language there. Okay. You do not have to explain that one. Oh, sorry, you do have to explain that one. I apologize. All right, and for all of this, you're going to use formal English. You're going to use Times New Roman 12-point font. And that's it. Just put it in bullet format because I think that's easier for you than trying to be narrative with it and write a paragraph. So I think that'll be better. And of course, as always, let me know if you have any questions.